Hello, everybody. Welcome to the final episode of Running Point in November. It is November 30th, the last day of the month. We're turning the calendar to December tomorrow. It is Anthony Hartwig alongside Scotty Mincher, like we are every Wednesday. And hey, look who's here. It's Gary Althiser, and it is time for Wrestling Wednesdays. Wrestling season is upon us again. Gary, we were talking off the air just how quick this off season has gone. Welcome back to wrestling.
Thanks for having me back. I had such a blast last year. It was so much fun every week coming on with you and Ty and being able to talk about, this sport that doesn't get enough exposure, if you ask me. So I'm thankful for YSN that they're trying to spread the news about the kids on the network here that wrestle and had really a phenomenal season last year with teams like Louisville and South Range with the success that they had. It was a great time. I'm glad you guys are bringing me back. I'm looking forward to this season.
So we look at, obviously you're able to talk so eloquently about all the programs that we have on YSN, but you are a coach yourself at Wellsville, the Wellsville wrestling coach. So I want to start the first episode of Wrestling Wednesdays with Gary with a kind of a little coach's corner and giving us a little insight on your program, what you expect out of the Tigers this year, and what you see out of your kids.
Well, thanks for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, this is my 8th season. This will be my 8th season as a head coach here. Last year I had, I believe, 12. Yeah, I had 12 kids on the team and 6 were seniors. So I really, I graduated a lot of experience. But I'm pretty encouraged by the numbers this year. I have 12 again. And of those 12, about half of them are experienced. I've had kids that have wrestled in the past that have come back out. My junior high numbers are really good. It's the best junior high numbers that I've had in probably 5, 6, 7 years. So we're looking forward to the season. I've got some inexperience on the team, but I do have experienced kids that are really helping out in the room with us. I've got a couple of new coaches on the staff this year, younger guys who've been around the sport. I got Skylar Lazier. He's on my staff. He's a 4-time state placer. He did wrestle for a little bit at Notre Dame College up in Cleveland, a really nationally known Division II school. I lost my main assistant coach, Tim Sarge. He's such a great guy to have on my staff for the last 5 years, but he's moved on to other things, including being a grandfather. So he's got other things to tend to. But with these younger guys coming in the room with me, I'm excited about what we can do. I've got 3 seniors and a junior who I'm expecting really good things from. One of them being Mason Sims. He's ranked in the top 10 in Division III in 106. Ty Rambo at 132. He didn't get to wrestle last year because he had a concussion that it took a long time for him to get back to where he needed to be to wrestle. So he actually didn't get to wrestle. And talk about a kid chomping at the bit to get on the mat. He's ready to go. Then I have senior Josh Fisher and Brent Joy Hughes, both been wrestling since they started walking. They've been wrestling. So those guys mixed in with the younger guys and our good junior high numbers. I'm really hoping for a good season this year, and then really continuing to plow through this sport with good numbers. As we talked last year on many occasions, it's super hard to fill 14 weight classes. To get 14 kids out in general for a sport when you only have 50 kids per grade, boys and girls, and I have to compete with a really good basketball and a really amazing bowling program. I'm thankful that the kids continue to come out, and then I continue to have guys who want to step up and help me on the coaching staff.
Like you said, a little bit of inexperience this year on the roster, but as a coach, is that kind of fun when you have a little bit of inexperience to kind of go back to teaching the basics and fundamentals and letting that teacher inside of you come out instead of just saying, managing almost. You're not managing, you're teaching more than managing with these kids that are kind of new and kind of green to wrestling.
Yeah, there's definitely that's definitely fun to do that and exciting, especially if the kid really wants to learn. If they're there because they wanted to try the sport out, they were curious about it, and they're really soaking things up. Absolutely, it's a lot of fun. I'll take any kid that wants to wrestle on the team, regardless of experience. Every year we have new kids that come out, and some of them pick it up really quick, and others you got to spend more time with. But that's what I personally like the most, is the one-on-one time with the kids in the room. And when you see a kid that's given effort and they're starting to make strides, it makes the day worth it, the practice worth it, and your time worth it. But I can't say enough about the experienced kids I have in the room really stepping up this year and helping out with these younger guys that I have, these inexperienced guys, and helping them come along. So I'm optimistic. We'll see what happens, but I'm ready to go, and I'm not sure I'm going to be sleeping much on Friday night.
I I had one question for you. I was thinking about this because Foxcatcher, which is about the U.S. Olympic wrestling champions, it's one of my favorite sports movies. So this is a two-parter. One, have you seen the movie Foxcatcher? And then two, just when it comes to wrestling, you've talked about like the lack of pub it gets exposure. So what is really your favorite thing, or maybe a couple of your favorite things about it? Like what's a really big selling point for you?
Well, first, Foxcatcher. Yeah, I saw the movie. I went to the theater and saw it. There are two documentaries about it as well. Netflix made one, and I can't remember who made the second one, but they're all really good um, documentaries. The movie did a great job. I think the guys that the actors in that movie did an awesome job, and the mannerisms of the wrestlers, really getting down. The behind the scenes kind of stuff that went into wrestling, especially that story. That's a story about a guy named John DuPont, and that name is exactly what you think it is. The DuPont company, they make cleaning supplies, a million of different things. He was a multi-millionaire who he invested in sports that weren't in the mainstream, sports like swimming or long distance running, and then he got into wrestling, and he started a club called Foxcatcher on his property in Pennsylvania, this ranch, this beautiful ranch, and he built facilities, brought guys in to be on his Foxcatcher team. He paid them a salary. He flew them all over the world to wrestle in these international events. And for the sport of wrestling, that there's only about, I think we talked about this a couple of times last year, probably about, I'd say 30 guys in the country who wrestle competitively and make a salary for that. So for he was probably a billionaire even 30 years ago, if not close, a billionaire to say, hey, come live on my farm, work out and train on the farm at these facilities that I've bought. I'm going to pay you an upper middle class salary and fly you around the world to wrestle for me on this Foxcatcher team and to get you ready for the international competitions for the United States. It was a something that those guys couldn't pass up. Unfortunately, John DuPont also had some mental health issues that led him to basically go senile, and he ended up killing one of the wrestlers on the team, one of the best wrestlers in the country at the time, and really one of the most successful international wrestlers we ever had. And now that guy, he lives in infamy in the wrestling communities. So that movie, it's good to hear you like that movie because it really was well acted, and the story stayed pretty close to what actually really happened. So as far as your second question, what do I love about the sport? I don't know how much time we've got on here today, Inf, but I could spend all day talking about that. But it really, the sport teaches you so many life lessons in one. And when I say it, you're in one sport doing one thing, but man, it really teaches you about how to be self-reliant, how to be accountable, how to not rely on anyone else or blame anyone else. When you are on the mat and it's you and just one other guy, what happens out there? It's on you. You know, I guess you could maybe blame the refs. You could maybe blame your coaches for telling you to do something that you maybe shouldn't have done. But the excuses are almost none. And to go out there and physically have to go against someone else who is physically trying to control you, put you in bad positions, and score points, to dig through that while you've spent an entire week in a hot wrestling room going at it with, you know, a dozen other guys who are doing the same things, watching what you eat, making sure you get your homework done, making sure that you are taking care of all your responsibilities at home. And kids these days, making sure you go to work and play maybe another sport at the same time, along with, again, that's just the physical and the time parts. There's a whole host of mental hurdles that you have to overcome, believing in yourself, not having self-doubt, not second guessing yourself. And then the emotional part, which really you want to talk about growing up early. Go out in front of a crowd of people, have another person physically control you, physically throw you around on the mat, physically beat you, have the other guy's hand raised in front of all of your peers, your friends, your family, and your classmates, you really have to learn a lot about yourself in that manner and who you are and how strong you really can be and need to be. You grow up quick, and I'll tell you, there was nothing in my childhood that matured me faster and prepared me more to be a grown man than wrestling.
All right, Gary, we got some preseason storylines to take care of, and I first want to talk about the kids that pop up on these preseason rankings and some of the best returning wrestlers in the YSN family that fans should really keep an eye on this year.
So yeah, I went through the rankings. Do you have some, Anthony? Anybody you want to talk about in particular?
I'm going to let you run the show.
All right, sure. So I did some research here. I went through BorrowFanohio.org or .com. I can't remember. He is the resident Ohio ranker as far as high school wrestling goes. He's done a great job. There was a guy named Mr. Brian Brakeman, who would put out a report every year on paper and mail it to each school district, and he would just have end of the season rankings. He retired because he knew that was with the internet coming, he couldn't keep up with the way information is released today. So this gentleman who runs a site called BorrowFan, he is who everybody in Ohio goes to for rankings. So I went through, looked off the top of my head who I could remember was in the YSN network that was ranked. Division I believe the only Division I schools, or there's a couple, Boardman, Austintown, Fitch. There might be one or two others I couldn't remember, but Austintown Fitch had 3 guys ranked in Division I. Division II, though, there was a ton of guys. There was 29 total. 6 from Canfield, 6 from Louisville, 4 from Howland, 4 from Beaver Local, and 3 from East Liverpool. And one of them in Division II, Dominic Hoffarth from Louisville, was the number 1 ranked kid. He was a returning state champion there. He is ranked number 1, and I don't see how that will change much as the season goes on, unless something happens during the season. Maybe he loses to somebody who he might meet in the state tournament. In Division III, there were 18 ranked wrestlers. South Range led the way with 6. That South Range team won the state championship last year, the dual meet championship, in really crazy, exciting fashion. They have 6 guys ranked. Garrettsville Garfield, another tough school, coming up with 5, and nobody else in Division III had more than 2 than those 2 teams there. There is a number 1 ranked kid in Division III, and that is Keegan Sell from Garrettsville Garfield. Him and Hunter Andell last year were both some of the heavier weight classes in Division III, guys that we kept an eye on. Both of them were state placers, and they do have the Sell kid ranked first right now. There was a couple of other guys in each division that were ranked in the top 5, but I just kept track of the number 1 rankings. And at 190 in East Liverpool, their Williams kid, Eric Williams, he was ranked number 1 all the way up until this week. And there must have been some guys who changed weight classes that went to 190 in Division II. So he's bumped down to 4th. That's another kid. I would be watching him like a hawk this year. He has the kind of skill to be able to bring home a state championship. And he didn't even wrestle last year. He was out with a broken collarbone, shoulder, something along those lines. But he's got the kind of skill. He won a junior high state championship. And the junior high state championships does not separate by division. So it is basically every single junior high kid that wanted to wrestle in a state tournament. He went to that state tournament and won that. And they do say within wrestling circles, the junior high state championship, the OAC junior high state championship, is the hardest state championship. It's the hardest tournament in the state of Ohio. So I'd be looking for Eric Williams to really make some noise.
With no separation of divisions, I can see why. I mean, you could be going up against a program that can almost handpick their wrestlers from a group of 1,000, a class of 1,000, and you could be in a school where you have maybe 100 per class. And so I can see why they say that that's the toughest championship to win.
Yeah, it's pretty predictable. You get guys there to do well. They're going to do well in high school.
You brought up South Range with six ranked players coming back from their state championship in the dual meets. What do you think are their chances to repeat?
I mean, that's a tall task to
Right.
do that for any team. I mean, with all these guys ranked, who knows? They got a roster of about 30 kids, I believe, for a Division III school. That's awesome. That means that hopefully you got at least 2 kids in each weight class. But Hunter Newell, he's a senior coming back. The Richardson kid at 144. They've got Starkey at 65. These are names that have just been around forever. Colucci at 215. Who knows? It's going to be tough because they're going to run into the guys on the other side of the state, like that Milan Edison team that they beat in the state finals. But as things move around, and they have the luxury of having guys that they could have. The Hunter Newell kid, he's at 106, but I bet he's going to wrestle 113 for most of the season until he gets to the sectional tournament, because they have another kid around at 106 who's probably a state qualifier, if not for the Newell kid being in that weight class. So I would say they still have a pretty good chance. But, they did lose some seniors last year, including a state finalist, and some other seniors that were really foundational on that team. That's not always easy to replace. But I do want to mention they have a kid at I think he's ranked at 144, 150. C. Schultz, I think is his kid's name. He's only a freshman. For him to be ranked as a freshman, I think he was ranked in the top 10. That's really saying something. So they just continue to reload. So I believe they have a good chance, but we'll see what happens.
Where do you get, where do they base the rank? If you're a freshman, how do they decide if you're ranked or not? Do they just go on what you did as a junior higher?
Yeah, so they were probably, I would imagine this kid probably did well at the junior high state tournament.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe he even won it. And then when he was probably in 7th and 6th grade, they allow 6th graders to wrestle in that junior high tournament, I believe. That he probably wrestled 8th graders that are now, juniors that he beat, who have done well at the tournament. So they probably base it on that. They base it on kids who have wrestled in open tournaments or national tournaments that he's probably beat or wrestled close with. And communicating today is pretty easy. You get a coach that starts emailing these guys that do the rankings and say, hey, my kid did this, at a tournament in another state, or he's practice partners with this guy and he goes right at him. They're pretty even. And this guy was a state placer last year. They have so many factors to take in,
right.
But I'll bet money that in his junior high years, he beat some really tough kids that are now sophomores and juniors in high school who maybe even placed last year.
All right, big coaching change in Boardman we have to talk about before we let you go. Mancini, moved on and they have a really big name coming to Boardman from Liberty, and it's one of the most standout names in wrestling, and very very noticeable when you see it. It's one of those ones that, oh, I know him.
Yeah, if you're familiar with the Youngstown area at all, Haiti is a name that everybody knows. He's the guy knows everybody. He owns businesses in Youngstown. He was the head coach at Liberty. I got some information here for 11 years. And one thing he always did well with Liberty was his numbers. He always had kids out on the team. And I don't know if I knew that a time where he didn't have a full team. He was 137 and 43 at Liberty. For his record, dual record, which is an amazing record. He takes over for Don Mancini. Don was a head coach for 21 years, 17 as a head coach alone, and in 4 years he was a co-head coach with his brother. Mancini had 26 state qualifiers, 16 state placers, and 1 state champion. But getting Haiti on that staff, I have a feeling that they're going to do just fine. He's great at recruiting. He told me about some things that he did where he would go to a basketball game and the wrestling team would sponsor T-shirts and give every single student at the Liberty basketball games a T-shirt, Liberty basketball, wrestling on the back or something like that to get the kids excited. So with a big school like that, I expect Boardman's numbers to be really great. If he doesn't have 35 or 40 kids on the team, I'll be shocked. But taking over for Mancini, he's been there since 2001. That's a name that people in Boardman know. I believe Mr. Mancini was a Boardman graduate. He did a lot of great things. He did coach a state champion in Boardman as well. So I'm interested to see how Haiti does there. Ryan Williams will be taking over that Liberty job. Ryan was assistant of Haiti's for, I believe, the entire time he was there, if not most of the entire time that Haiti was in Liberty. There was also one other change, a big change. Rocky Laughlin at Louisville stepped down. We had him on the show last year. He was a state champion coach for that Louisville team in the dual meet championships. He had 40 state qualifiers, 21 placers, 4 state champs, and 2 runners up while he was there. And Micah Coleman takes over, a guy from Minerva. So those are a couple really big changes that we're seeing in the wrestling community. So it'll be exciting to see how these guys do and how they can continue these traditions.
The Louisville Leopards, like we said before, bring back John Hovarth, who won the state championship last year. So a lot of reasons to be excited in Louisville, a lot of reasons to be excited in Boardman and Liberty for their wrestling program. And we can't wait for the rest of the season, Gary. We're going to have you back every week. We're going to try to get as many wrestlers and coaches on with you as possible and have some fun with Wrestling Wednesdays with Gary. thank you so much for taking the time today and giving us kind of a preview of the season. And we'll talk to you again next week.
Hey, thanks guys for having me. I'm excited.